We're going to have $2.5 million of the construction paid for in cash, and then we're going to borrow $2 million on a 15-year, probably a tax anticipation note, not a bond, and the local option tax, which makes about, the last fiscal year it made $943,000 in change, and we're looking to allocate about a little over $200,000 of that revenue every year for 15 years to pay that debt, which is really the only debt the town has. So we're in good shape.
Sounds in pretty good shape financially then. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're working on things. We want to make sure that we stay in good shape. We've been very lucky to be able to pay cash for all of our DPW and fire department equipment apparatus, and we're working on budgeting a long-term capital plan to make sure that we continue to do that with Public Works. Our fire department reserve account is funded and continues to be funded through property taxes. So that's our immediate fiscal challenge, is meeting it's roughly, $250,000 to $300,000 a year that we need to save for to meet our needs with Public Works for the next 10 years with our equipment. Those numbers have really inflated a lot over the last year, like everything else. Right now in the general fund, our last property tax bill, our last budget only had about $35,000 going into the reserve fund. So we're looking at about a $250,000 property tax increase in our budget, which will amount to roughly 2.5 cents. And, I'm going to advocate that we put that on the ballot for the voters to really understand. That way, when they see that increase on their bill, they'll understand where it came from. I think that's as transparent as we could be.
Can you do that?
Absolutely, yeah. And if I don't think it would fail. The town of St. Albans has really never failed paying cash for equipment in my tenure. But if it did fail, we'd be in a tough spot. But we don't just want to raise the amount to be raised by property taxes, that amount we vote on every year, by $250,000 and not explain it. And I think an article on the ballot would give us the best vehicle to be able to, tell people what the need is, what we're going to use the money for, and how. And I think people will support it. But a 2.5 cent increase on a 40-cent property tax rate is considerable, and we know that. But we can't find $250,000 in this budget. We have a roughly $5.5 million budget. About $4 million of it's raised by property taxes, 4 to 4.5, and there's just not $250,000 there to cut. 5 to 10 years ago, maybe. When we were in the heat of litigation with the city, our legal budget was $75,000, and we've cut that down to I think this year, in this fiscal year, is $25,000.
Really?
Our engineering consulting used to be $75,000 or $50,000. We've cut that to $25,000. I mean, we've cut a lot. So now, if we're going to meet the need to fund this equipment without having to go and take out loans and pay the interest and have a higher net cost at the end, we're going to need to talk about how we're going to fund that reserve.
So the town hall, of course, is the big issue on the March town meeting ballot earlier this year. Any biggies like that in the upcoming next year's town meeting?
I see the truck fund being and that's what I've kind of christened it, as the truck fund. It's the DPW equipment reserve. We'll need to figure that out. We're working on it now. We had a number this spring, but inflation has, really messed with it. So we're getting fresh street numbers now, and we're redoing the plan so we come with an accurate figure. The last estimate I got from staff was between $275,000 and $300,000. And like I said, we budget now. We're paying in our property tax rate now about $35,000. So we figure we'll end up around a $250,000 tax increase. But it's nothing that we take lightly. If we could find it in other areas of the budget, we would. I could see where some taxpayers would advocate that we use some of the roughly $700,000 that we'll have left over after the town hall annual payment and local option tax dollars to pay for the trucks, but it was set up for infrastructure. And now that the town hall and the public works facility will have been taken care of, so to speak, we'll have a discussion to have about the fire department within the next 5 years, if we need a satellite station and if we're going to renovate the current one on Lake Road. But beyond that, we can really start unleashing this money on infrastructure meant to grow the grand list, I think is the goal.
Any of the rec path that was proposed a few years ago that voters shot down from Saytech, I guess, out to Collins Pearly, has that got any life to it, or?
Well, we tried to revitalize that under the name of the St. Albans Health Path, and we applied for a VTrans grant to cross the St. Albans State Highway.
Which has always been kind of the big issue, right?
And VTrans denied it. So what we've done is we've re-envisioned the plan and thought more globally about it. We think a path that connects Collins Pearly to Hardack, and then Hardack to the rail trail, and then eventually connecting Route 7 and Upper Weldon and Fairfield Street to this path. And then Congress, obviously, the city's already putting the Congress Street sidewalk into Hardack as part of the pool project. If we can do that, we think it'd be pretty transformative, and it might help bring some growth to the Exit 19 Growth Center. And it'd be something that we would use. I mean,
Well, there was talk for years about a supermarket not far from Exit 19. Is that talk long gone?
there's a Shaw's, a bank, I
Right, I
think.
remember Shaw's, and of course a restaurant, the early expectation. I
Yeah.
guess there's still a lot out there for a restaurant.
I think that the current, the property owner is waiting for the right first move.
Yeah,
I think, that corner piece on 104 and the Sash and the off-ramp,
yeah,
I think that's, in that property owner's mind, has to go to the right buyer to set the tone for the rest of the development of that
Yeah.
area.
yeah,
And in a lot of ways, we should be grateful, because I'm sure that landowner could have sold that chunk of land, that prime piece, that could really welcome people into St. Albans with something big.
yeah.
There could be a bank there, a dentist's office, or something along those lines. But I think the property owners are being very selective. And, as our population continues to grow and the lots up here in Franklin Park West sell, we just, we're excited to know that Camping World is coming where TCRVs was,
So that's definite. They're definitely en route.
they are
kind of?
working on their conceptual site plans and
Really?
building renderings, and we hear communications, and
Of course, you have the new Subaru dealership moving along out on
yeah, Haddad
north of Route
Subaru.
7.
Yeah, that's coming along very well. SD Ireland's doing a nice job on the site work, and George Haddad, of Haddad Subaru is I think he's going to be a great addition to our area's business owners, and
Interesting.
I think he'll be a pretty positive person for St. Albans, and I'm grateful that he picked our area out of all the other areas he could have built a dealership,
Yeah.
and we look forward to his ribbon cutting for sure.
Back to the town hall timeframe. When should that be finished?
We're hoping to be actively moving in May, but we're mindful of shortages. I think that's the biggest thing we're up against is inflation and shortages, but we've got a really good qualified team of people. I mean, I thought the pre-development costs, architects, engineers, project managers, geotechnical engineers to tell us about what the soil could take for the foundation. I mean, I thought that was very exorbitant at first.
Yeah.
After seeing what these people have done for us and the quality of their work product, I'm grateful that we hired them all. And I think it's going to result in a really well-constructed building that'll last us a really long time.
Any news on the former public works site on the lake? Talked about maybe another boat access. Anything nailed down on that?
Yeah, I mean, our biggest problem in the town is that there's 15 different projects we could break ground on tomorrow if we had them engineered and we had permits in place and
Yeah.
grant funding. And it's just, we have, to give an example, the city of St. Albans has 96 full-time equivalent employees the last time I checked. We have around 19 or 20.
Yeah.
So we really have to break down, this is priority 1, this is
Yeah.
priority 2, and sometimes you can't even work on priority 3. So our town manager is really into working on that town hall. It's a very active, involved role.
Yeah.
Corey Parent, our director of operations, is working really hard on scoping the St. Albans Health Path. There was a grant for that we received. He's been working with our stormwater coordinator, Emily Sherrington, on some important stormwater work.
Yeah.
We received a grant to design and construct a stormwater system, up to 80% of the costs for design and construction for the Clyde Island Drive area. We've got another grant out for Tanglewood right now we're waiting to hear back on. And we are working with the city and the school district on behind Saytech and Gricebrook to capture some runoff there. These are all really expensive projects, but we're hoping to pull in some of that Act 76 money from a few years ago that's still in the funding bill, and then our ARPA money.
In spec, I was about to ask you about that. So we're talking serious talk about maybe a municipal sewage system in the Bay Area?
It wouldn't be a conventional direct discharge sewer system like what the city has. Very hard to permit and very costly. But what they do now, and as technology comes along and engineering advances, they have these decentralized sewer systems which can handle, 100 or 200 homes, and essentially what they are big mound systems. And you can make them very localized to eliminate the need for pump stations, which are often enough the most expensive part of sewer infrastructure.
Yeah.
So our goal is to create an economic development water quality project out of it, and to use our ARPA money as seed money, our 1.9 million we received from the American Rescue Plan Act, as seed money to pull in, a very serious amount of grant money to really take a big swing at, connecting, the Bay Village area, maybe even Hathaway Point, to a municipal decentralized sewer system. And as we connected people, they would have, monthly or quarterly service bills, just like folks connected to the St. Albans wastewater system have. And part of that would be funding for an eventual replacement, because these systems last about 50 years is what I've been told.
Really?
So we're working on it.
You think that's likelier than not, or hard to say at this point? It's still pretty early.
Well, we put out a request for qualifications for an engineer to help us scope the project, and we've received quite a few responses. And next will be an RFP, and then we'll approve that, and then we'll get into the thralls of designing it. And once we have the design and preliminary construction numbers figured out, which I think will take a good amount of time, we've got our stormwater coordinator in place to be able to help, track different buckets of money where we could pull water quality funding from. And the bipartisan infrastructure bill has quite a bit of funding for America's water and wastewater systems in
And a
it too.
project like that would seemingly qualify. That's
I would hope. I mean, I know that President Biden wants to use as much money as possible to fix existing systems, especially those with lead lines, to provide people with clean drinking water. And this is the first time in my adult life that I can remember a bipartisan, infrastructure bill that actually could amount to something.
amazing. Something actually got, I guess, the president signing that maybe this week or next week or something.
It's a silver lining in Washington, and the town is going to set itself up to try to capture as much grant funding as possible. But we know that there are all kinds of buckets of federal and state money available right now, and two of the greatest needs that they're trying to address with those buckets of money are water quality and water and wastewater infrastructure. So we're hoping if we can take an existing underutilized area that is the Bay Village area that used to be the center of St. Albans at one point in time, if we can turn around and pitch the revitalization of it, after having really successfully, to this point, we're not finished, but we're on the path of revitalizing the Bay Park. More and more people are coming every year.
I walked there. In fact, I walked there earlier today. I walk there pretty much every day. No, I think you do a great job. And speaking of the Bay Park, I guess we should quickly note the Holly Jolly Jamboree, not too far away. Have I got the name right for that? No.
The Holly Jolly Jamboree, it's
November 26th, I believe.
I think so.
Day after Thanksgiving.
I don't have the date off the top of my head, but I think you're right.
We're talking the Friday right after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I think you're right. People's Trust Company's working with us to help put that on. And we're really, excited to keep welcoming people to the Bay. We're excited for folks to experience Bayside who may not have been there before. We were excited to see the owners of the Bay store really put a lot of money and energy into fixing it up the last couple of years. You notice as you drive by, there's been quite a bit of work done to it, especially this year, inside and out.
The Creamy Stand, of course, an extremely popular place in summertime.
Absolutely. You drive by there's a line out from the Creamy Stand all the way around to the entrance usually to the store. If you offer a good enough atmosphere, people will come. And we know we have to do a better job at certain things, but we're on our way. And
see potential for other is there room and potential for some other businesses down there, Brendan?
If we had the sewer capacity, maybe.
If you had them.
Yeah.
Now, what about the soon to be, or some months down the road, half a year down the road? Well, your former town hall. You're sensing any interest that anybody might have in dealing with that place?
I've had some off-record conversations with some community nonprofits.
Yeah.
I think we'd like to see it utilized in a way that would continue to support the community.
Yeah,
And if not, I think there's definitely a market available to turn it into professional office space.
yeah.
You could see a public-private partnership
Huh.
of some kind. We know that building probably can't be turned into housing just due to the septic capacity, but if there's a decentralized sewer system that can handle some flow, it very well could be someday.
Huh. So obviously you hope there'll be continued life to that building?
Oh, I hope so, and I hope, in my mind, it would be very fitting for a community nonprofit, like some of the ones that we've had very early conversations with, to occupy at least part of that building.
Yeah.
And
And the marina coming off seemingly a pretty good summer?
yeah, I think so. I haven't spoken with.
I think I saw one boat. I think there's one boat left that's still docked there for some reason.
I haven't had a chance to talk to Chuck Lowe for a little while,
Yeah.
but when I talked to him earlier this summer, he said that it was their busiest year so far, and if the Canadian border was open, they might have had another 20 boats.
So I'm sure that hurt him. Speaking of which, nice that the border's finally open, although it still sounds like it's not the easiest situation for Canadians coming south when they would have to get a test to go back north. But
Yeah,
at least finally some movement at least.
my wife's family,
Right.
majority, we traveled to just outside Montreal to with my 7-week-old son. He was
Right.
5 weeks at the time, and
Wow.
he's got 3 living great-grandparents on that side of the
Wow.
border, and we all converged for a weekend, and it was a pretty great experience. We hadn't seen
Well, I
certain
bet.
family members for
Long
over 2
time.
years,
Wow.
and
Wow.
so we experienced going over. It was my first time getting tested, which Northwestern Medical Center handled very well out of the
Yeah.
Valley Crossroads building. My hat's off to everything that
Yeah,
community
no, they're
hospital.
doing good work.
Northwestern Medical Center proved the necessity of community-led hospitals. They're doing an amazing job. Hats off to their new CEO. And
And I guess
their
looking
board
at
of
a pretty
directors.
big expansion of the, emergency department, they're looking to
Yeah,
throw in some
from what I
pretty big
hear.
bucks.
Yeah, and I walked through it a few times on my way to the
Huh.
Family Birthing Center in September, and it's definitely in need of a comprehensive update.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we've got good people on the leadership team at NMC and on their board that are leading in that direction. And they're very strategic, well thought out individuals, and they're working hard.
Speaking of the pandemic, boy, it sounds like pretty scary numbers for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it is.
Governor getting some pressure from a number of folks to kind of tighten things down again. He seems to be resisting that. But any adverse effect that you're seeing in the town at this point from these high numbers?
I personally have not witnessed anything out of
Yeah.
what we've seen over the summer.
And your meetings, they're in-person meetings now, plus Zoom?
So what we've gone to, at one point this summer, we had allowed in-person attendance by the public. What we're doing now are limited staff attendance, the board attending in person in our boardroom, which is very small and has no real air ventilation. And we're asking the public to attend strictly by Zoom at this time.
Is that right?
But you could see, we don't really understand if there's a seasonality to COVID like there is the common flu.
Yeah.
So if case numbers continue to climb nationwide as we approach the winter months and all head indoors, you could see some things change.
But town hall folks can walk into the town hall for
Absolutely.
business.
Yep, we're open
that's
right now to the
open.
public. You may see us shift back to appointment only, but that'll be a decision that the clerk and manager will make, and I'm sure they'll rely on data and expert advice as they make it. Anna Borden, our town clerk, and our town manager, Carrie Johnson, did a pretty excellent job so far managing COVID. They've, we are not immune to having, COVID exposures in our staff. It's happened in Public Works and the fire department, and it's handled so well that it doesn't make the news or affect our services. And I take my hat off to the town manager for leading that charge, and Anna Borden and her assistant clerk, Lisa Rock, have done an excellent job managing our elections. They've taken on more work than they've ever had with the stormwater utility. They're managing all of the billing and payments, and they didn't ask, for any additional money when we impose that on them.
And again, people are getting a separate bill for that, Brendan, or is that?
They are. We wanted to put it on the tax bill, but ran into either a statute or
Oh, really?
software issue that prevented us from doing that.
Huh.
So yeah, it's two separate bills. The revenues are, separated, and the property tax revenue goes into the general fund. 80% of it goes to the education fund.
Right.
And then the stormwater utility money goes into the utility account and is segregated and used strictly for utility expenses.
Right. I guess this issue, I've got a headline here from paper, Select Board considers creation of belonging equity committee.
Yeah.
So that's come up.
So a group of residents have approached the select board in support of a committee. And our board has been trying to accomplish a lot of this work ourselves over the last several months. You've seen us recognize certain months and holidays that we've previously that have previously gone unrecognized. And we're looking at like one of the things that came out of Bay Day and the Great Race this year is, it's expensive to have a road bike and a canoe or kayak to participate, and should the town seek grant money to have, 3 to 5 sets of equipment on hand to be able to allow participation from low-income or marginalized residents. So we're in that mindset. We just worked with regional planning to apply for a grant to modernize our bylaws. The Planning Commission's working on that now, and they're looking at every bylaw through an equity lens best they can. And I really appreciate the residents stepping up. It's nice to see, energy. Personally, I'm leaning in a direction of hiring a consultant that does this work every day. You've seen corporations.
Part-time consultant, presumably?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a full-time, it wouldn't be, tens of thousands of dollars. It'd probably be in the thousands. We'd have to find that money in the existing budget. We wouldn't raise taxes to cover it. But I think we'd benefit from having someone who understands what a municipality's role is in the community and the services that we're supposed to provide, and evaluate how we provided our services and our existing ordinances and policies, and tell us if we're out of step, and if we are, we'll make some corrections. At the end of the day, we're responsible for providing emergency services, plowing and maintaining roads, and administering land use laws. And we need to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's fair to everyone. I just got an email this morning from the Franklin County Sheriff's Office through our town's administration that included data broken down by race for total incidents and traffic stops.
Interesting.
We're monitoring that at the Police Advisory Committee and Select Board level. So the idea of creating an equity committee, if a consultant were to tell us that that's something that would be valuable to our mission, I would seriously consider supporting it. Right now, I think we need to develop a scope of what we want to look at and how we want to look at it, and then seek a qualified person that can help us accomplish that. And I don't know what the methodology is. I would assume that a consultant would have some hearings of sorts, some public meetings for people to be able to attend and share their perspectives with him or her. And
is that something, I assume a lot of communities are considering the same thing?
Is
that something you might possibly get together with the city on, or no such talks?
I haven't talked to Mayor Smith or the city manager about it. I think they're working on it with an equity committee of their own. I actually got the idea of using a consultant from the school district. I talked to, I had a pretty short discussion with the new superintendent, Mr. Bill Kimball, and asked him what the school district was doing, and he said that they had hired some consultants to help out. And as I did more research, you find that, universities and corporations and even utilities like Green Mountain Power are hiring these consultants and, accomplishing a lot of this work in-house, with their help. And I think that's the direction we need to head. It's so easy to create a committee. But if you're not set on the right course and you don't have a plan to execute that's been developed by somebody that knows what your end goal is, I don't know that it can be successful. And I don't want to set a group of residents that have all the energy to be able to help us do this up to fail. So it's not a tricky discussion. I think everybody from the top end of our administration down to everybody on the select board agrees that, you know, this work should be accomplished. The methodology to it is up for debate, but I'm leaning in the direction of, you know, hiring a consultant probably at the beginning of the next fiscal year.
Okay, down to about 2.5 minutes. Speaking of the Sheriff's Department about what, almost 4.5 months into coverage of the town. How do you think they're doing?
So we had a survey. The Police Advisory Committee put out one of their semi-annual surveys, and I think the satisfactory rate among residents for the Sheriff's Department services was either 75 or 80%.
Did you do the same thing when City PD was covering the town? Have you got anything to compare that to?
We did not. We reformed the Police Advisory Committee in the last year of SAPD's tenure with us. So we're monitoring.
That's pretty favorable number there, huh?
Right, and the data we reviewed this morning didn't have anything that jumped out at me, but again, I'm not an analyst, so, you know, we'll see what comes of it. And, you know, the Sheriff's Office has been transparent, you know, along with this data on incidents and traffic stops broken down by race was also a raw data of all of the incidents. And then they actually had their shift schedule showing which deputies were in the town and when.
Really?
So Sheriff Langevin and Captain John Grismore have, in my mind, lived up to the contract, best I know. And I appreciate their hard work and, you know, all their deputies for everything they're doing for us.
Interesting. Down to just over a minute. Anything you want to quickly discuss that we haven't gotten into?
Yeah, I mean, I know with COVID, it's really hard to get a hold of certain, you know, people in the community, but the town's website has emails and phone numbers for every select board member and every member of the town staff. And if you have an issue that you feel the town needs to address, call one of us, please. We really rely on your eyes and ears to help us see things that we miss. So I guess that's my message on this dark November night, just to never be afraid to reach out. We don't bite, and, you know, we look forward to working with you to make St. Albans the best it can be.
Yeah, just in a few more seconds, city-town relations, we could probably talk about that for a while, but some discussions with the city about some issues?
You know, we work very well together in the rec reimbursement program. Our public works and fire departments are cooperating well. And we're not looking to upset any apple carts, but there's very little, if any, discussions for anything new.
Is that right?
So we're not at each other's throats. You know, there's no animosity, but there's no active discussion for any new endeavors. Okay, we'll leave it right there. Thanks to Brendan Deso, Chairman of the St. Albans Town Selectboard. St. Albans Town, the largest municipality these days in Franklin County. Thanks, Brendan. Thanks to producer Alan Cunningham. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. See you next time.